I want to help you guys visualize your cash flow today so that you can have a better retirement. So when you think about your cash flow, it looks something like this. So up top here, you have your income. Down here, you have your expenses. Now, when most people think about their cash flow, they typically just think about their active income that they earn, maybe either individually or as a family, their earned income through work. So you get paid every 2 weeks. That's your income. And then your monthly spending. That is how most people just think of their cash flow. Just money coming in, money coming out. But cash flow in reality is actually more complicated than that and is bigger than that. And this is really important to understand as you head into retirement. Now, above your income, you actually have your assets. So when people start out working, their assets maybe are like this, that produce a little bit of income. And then the remainder of their income is over here from your employment. So while this is great, obviously what happens is if you want to retire one day, you need to have your assets completely replace your income. So what happens over time is if you were doing this right, is your assets continue to grow and they get to a point where they produce enough income for you to maintain your expenses. And typically what happens is people retire whether they know this or not, whether this is happening, is when this box is small and their assets are producing enough income for them to live. Pretty straightforward. But here's what people's actual cash flow looks like. So this is a pretty stable state. So if you were to look at your actual cash flow today, it would look something this. You'd have your income up top here, and then you'd have your expenses down here. Now what you can see versus my previous example is this top is bigger than this bottom. And this is what I call the income gap. And this is a good thing or a bad thing. In this example here, right here, this person is making more money than they are spending. Now, what's great about this and what actually happens or what actually should happen is that your excess income goes up here and fills this bucket right here. That produced more income. So this is an ideal state. So if you ever wondered how people get so wealthy, two ways. They either build a great asset up here that produces a lot of income, so this is typically business owners, or what they do is they have their income, regardless of where it's at, and they try and shrink this line as much as possible. So there's as big a gap here as they possibly can get, right like that. So the bigger this hole is, the more money you can slide back to get assets. And as this happens over time, this bar gets bigger and it gets bigger, and this is compounding wealth. That's what this is. And the income gets bigger and bigger, and this gap goes bigger. All this line goes out, and this gets bigger and bigger, and you have this virtuous compounding effect. And this is actually how wealth compounds. Now, you have a specific graph like this. I don't know what it looks like, right? I'm going to show you what bad looks like. So let's say you're fresh out of college, for example. This is what bad looks like. You have your income right there, and you have your expenses over here. And you can see here that there's like a negative income gap, that this person is actually spending more money than they are making. Now, what happens here is people go into debt, or what happens is they spend their assets. So typically, people without money, they go into debt, and people who have assets, they spend their assets. Now, what ends up happening if you are spending your assets, the ramifications of going into debt is pretty obvious, right? Now, if you're spending your assets, you'll get into this cycle where your bar will be like this, but then if you spend more than you're making, this bar will go down, and then you'll go back here. And this constant cycle of saving and spending and saving and spending, so you're actually not getting anywhere. Then what happens is you are totally reliant on income from work to provide your cash flow. So this is what bad looks like. Now, in reality, here's where most people are at. They spend basically what they make. Now, maybe they'll save a few percent and get the match, right? And so slowly over time, this red bar, which again represents your assets, will get bigger over time. But I want to talk to you guys about where people go wrong and how they actually don't get this bar ever big enough. I call them the known unknowns. I've had the privilege of serving hundreds of families over the years as a wealth manager, and I can't tell you how many phone calls that I've gotten in from things that are completely random, like a root canal, for example, or a big storm blows through at a lake property and causes thousands of dollars of damages and trees because there's downed trees everywhere. So what I've noticed is most people are pretty good about spending on average, the same thing every month on the fixed costs. So everyone knows their car payments, everyone knows their insurance payment. Most people save a fixed percentage of their salary, right? So most people are pretty good about actually just saving and spending on average month over month. Now, where people get thrown off is the known unknowns, the random things in life that you don't know what they will be, but you can guess the cost, right? So if your tires go bad or if you get in a car accident, it's going to cost a few $1,000s. And this is where those statistics of most Americans, they can't come up with $400 or $1,000 or whatever it is. The reason people stay on that cycle is these known unknowns, is they're constantly at a point where just bad things happen and it just drains their ability to get ahead and to buy more assets. Now, if you're in your pre-retirement age, understanding your cash flow and what this actually looks like is really important. So when you want to optimize your cash flow, what I like to do with families is to do really just two things. So first of all, is to know how much money you actually spend. So on average, if you look at the past 12 months, there's enough known unknowns in the last 12 months in your financial life to basically understand what you spend every month. So let's just say you spend $7,000 a month in fixed costs, and on average you have, let's just say $1,500 of, we'll just call them UKs, right? This is on average. So you would be spending roughly $100,000 per year. Now, when it comes time to retirement planning, it is absolutely critical. Almost the first thing you need to do is figure out how much money are you going to spend in retirement, because then all of the math that comes from that it comes from that number. So let's just say you were spending $100K. The next step is to understand your income. So most people know how much money they make, right? You have a salary, you get some variable comp, your spouse has a salary, he or she has variable comp. Most people know how much money they make, right? But what's a little trickier is knowing how much money your portfolio is going to make, right? Because most people, let's just say, again, you're in your 50s, your bar is like something like this. But in retirement, what you want to do is you want to make it look like this. You want your assets to be big, and you don't have to work, you choose to work. That is like the ideal situation. That is financial freedom right there. So what's tricky is if this is today and this is the future, you need to understand how much income is your portfolio producing today. Then you need to understand how much income your portfolio should be producing, ballpark, when you want to retire. So if you're 50 today and this is 65, this would be the goal of your financial plan. So first step to optimize your cash flow is to understand your expenses, your true expenses, including the unknown knowns. The second step is to understand your income sources, both active and passive, and what you need to do to have the bar. Then, what you want to do after you understand your income and your expenses in totality, you want to start building out a system in which you can hopefully shrink this line here. So you want to push this line in, your expenses. Then you want to grow this line, your income, so that you have a big gap. And then once you have a really great income gap, what ends up happening is then you have the ability and you can take advantage of opportunities as they arise to buy more assets here and to build this into a bigger bar. So wealthy people get wealthy is because they have low expenses and high income, so much income that they can reinvest that income back into more assets, and that is how compounding actually works. And so to do this, you need to optimize your income and your expenses. I want to talk briefly about taxes because something like insurance is insurance, right? Some people say taxes are taxes. It's like, yes. But true tax efficiency, so the amount of money you pay divided by your income or divided by your net worth, happens over decades. So you think about the value of tax planning and you think about like how somebody like Warren Buffett can compound and to pay so little as a percentage of his net worth each year to the taxes, it's because of long-term tax planning. So what happens when you have a long-term tax strategy in retirement? Taxes, let's say, are this. They're just like almost a guaranteed expense. But when you do a good job of designing what this box up here looks like, you can create a system in which your income and the money you spend in retirement is tax efficient. So you can grow this box while having a tax, not paying a lot of taxes down here. This is done through Roth conversions. There's tax loss selling. There's various different methods in which you can design long-term tax efficiency. So what ends up happening in retirement is if you just eliminate taxes or if you just pay less taxes, you can see here, you just created a bigger gap. Now in retirement, if you created a little bit extra money by being tax efficient, you can use this to take trips. You can use this to give money away. Or you can reinvest it back here. So when you think about in retirement, what you want to be doing, you want to have a really good understanding of your expenses on your balance sheet. You want to be creating this gap, right? And you really want to manage these UKs down here so that you can do the fun things, the right on top, right? So with that, that's where I'm going to leave this video at, is just understanding your cash flow. I hope you found some value in this. If you did, we've got a really cool offer for you in the description of this video. It's called our Strategic Wealth Assessment. What we do for folks who are in pre-retiring is to get a 360-degree financial snapshot of your financial life, the things that you excel in, the things that you are just okay in, and the areas where you just straight up need to do better. A lot of this revolves around cash flow. We'll then give you an in-depth look like this hypothetical here. Tax planning was a low area for this family. And we'll walk you through the 3 lowest areas and what you can do to be better. Then we'll give you a roadmap of success, roadmap of things to consider for you as you head into retirement. So take us up on this offer. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment. We'd be happy to have a conversation down there. Thanks for your time. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video if you found it helpful, and we'll see you guys next time.